He left me with nothing but shattered promises and an empty home. Christine's words sliced the courtroom like a knife, cutting the silence into shards. Her voice shook with anger, but held a weight of 20 years of hurt. The crowd gasped, a sound so piercing it felt as if the very air had been punched from the room. All eyes turned to the defendant's table. There sat Kody Brown, the man who had once been the self-assured head of the Sister Wives dynasty, the man who had established his fame on charm and authority, now a statue. His jaw was set, his lips pursed so hard they were next to invisible. His legendary golden curls were tied back neatly, but nothing in him seemed neat anymore. He stood cornered, denied the authority he previously wielded on television sets throughout the globe. The air within the courtroom was heavy, nearly suffocating. The tension crackled, like the walls themselves were aware that something historic was taking place within them. Witnesses hunched forward, devouring each word. This wasn't any other family soap opera. This wasn't jealousy, or love, or petty disagreements. This was betrayal. This was survival. This was about one man accused of leaving a woman, once his wife, with absolutely nothing. Christine sat erect, though her hands quivered ever so slightly as she clutched the wooden podium in front of her. She wasn't the same woman who had appeared years ago, smiling graciously, keeping her anguish veiled behind cunningly selected words. His was a different Christine. Her eyes blazed with fire, and her voice bore the gravitas of authenticity. For an instant she gazed at Kody straight on. It wasn't a look of hate. It wasn't even love. It was colder than that, the look of a woman who had nothing to lose. The judge, a woman with a stern face and sharp glasses, adjusted her papers. Her gavel rested quietly, but its very presence reminded everyone that this trial was more than personal grudges. This was law. This was justice. And yet, everyone in the room knew the truth. This was also spectacle. No cameras inside, but the news was already out. Reporters huddled outside, cameras at the ready to snag a reaction the moment the gavel fell. The Sister Wives family had always been under the microscope, but never like this. Never with Kody Brown sitting in the hot seat, charged with leaving one of his wives not only heartbroken, but homeless, betrayed and deprived of her fair share. Whispers echoed through the courtroom's rear rows. A woman turned to her friend and whispered, "Can you believe it? Kody Brown tried like this? I used to think he was together." Her friend nodded. "This isn't about television anymore. This is real. Look at Christine. She isn't doing this for a show. She's fighting for her life." The bailiff ordered silence, and the murmurs withered away into the oppressive stillness once more. Everyone's gaze came back to the woman at the center of the drama. Christine's attorney, a lanky man with steel-gray hair and a strong presence, approached. "Tell us, Mrs. Brown," he instructed firmly. "What occurred after you decided to depart Mr. Brown's home?" Christine's throat constricted, but she spoke nevertheless. Her voice cracked, but it traveled through the whole room. "Freeing him," she started, her voice deliberate and slow. "I thought it would set me free, but it did nothing. I left that house with my kids, and thought at least I would have a place to live. Instead, I found bills that hadn't been paid, accounts that were drained, and a home that no longer belonged to me." Gasps resounded once more. Christine's fingers clenched around the stand. She stared straight ahead, her eyes brimming with both pain and defiance. "Kody said he would give me stability. He said he would give me partnership. He said he would give me respect. But when I walked away, all I got was broken promises and an empty house. All my work, all my sacrifices were gone. He gave them all to someone else." Her sentences hung thick in the air. Even the judge's face relaxed, if only briefly. Kody shifted in his seat, his eyes flicking to Christine, then to his clasped hands, his face contorted with something between rage and terror. He wanted to protest, to yell, to plead, but he remained silent, his attorney's hand resting on his arm to remind him to bite his tongue. The courtroom was charged, the kind that sears through silence, the kind that makes every pulse of the heart sound like thunder. No one was willing to move. No one was willing to breathe too loudly. Outside the courthouse, microphones were held up, and cameras flashed. They had no idea what was going on inside, but they didn't have to. They understood that this trial was not just a case. It was the undoing of an empire. The Brown family's empire. Inside, Christine went on. Her voice became steadier, stronger. For years, I was a polygamy believer. I believed in family. I sacrificed everything for that faith. And when it all crumbled, I figured at least I would be treated with dignity. But instead, I was left to fight, while Kody constructed a palace for Robin. I was left to question how a man who proclaimed to love all of his wives equally could leave me so utterly. She hesitated, her breath coming and going, as the gravity of her words weighed on the space. The lawyer nodded once, then faced the judge. Your Honor, this is not simply about an unsuccessful marriage. This is about financial betrayal. This is about a man who left his wife with zero and ensured luxury for another. This case isn't about love. It's about justice. The judge doodled something on her pad. The bailiff cleared his throat again, and there was silence once more. But the silence didn't sound peaceful. It sounded ominous, like a storm cloud brewing. From the opening sentence, this case had threatened one thing, a verdict that could ruin the Brown legacy for good. And as Christine retreated, her gaze locking with Kody's one final time, the courtroom audience knew this was just the start. The tension had been built, the lines had been drawn, and the truth, whatever that was going to make all the difference. Christine's attorney, Mr. Daniels, loosened his tie and moved into the middle of the courtroom. His tone was crisp, honed, and had the weight behind it of a man who had battled cases like this before. For over 2 decades, he started walking slowly. My client sacrificed her life to this man. She raised his children. She constructed his house. She obeyed his commands. She believed him. He paused, his finger facing Kody straight. And what did she get in return? Abandonment, deception, and financial devastation. A murmur ran through the crowd. The reporters wrote furiously in their notebooks, already predicting the headline, Betrayal in the Brown Family, Kody Brown on Trial. Christine's face did not falter, but her eyes shone with unshed tears. She sat rigid, hands clasped in her lap, refusing to glance away from the man who had promised to give her a forever family. Mr. Daniels faced her again. Mrs. Brown, would you explain to the court, in your own words, what you learned when you tried to stabilize your finances after you left the Brown home? Christine swallowed hard. The room was still, waiting. When I left, I felt I had security, she replied softly, her voice cracking a bit at the extremities. I felt like that money we had saved, the house we were in, and the accounts we shared were still mine to rely on. But when I checked, there was nothing. The accounts were drained. The house wasn't even in my name anymore. Gasps filled the room once again. Someone in the back growled, unbelievable. Christine took a deep breath. Her voice became stronger. And while I was struggling to locate a home, while I was stressing about bills accumulating, Kody was transferring funds, not for us, not for our children, but to purchase Robin a mansion. A mansion while I had nothing. Her attorney nodded in satisfaction. Then, with flair, he produced a sheaf of papers. Your Honor, I offer the court Exhibit A, Brown Family Account Financial Records. They rather strongly indicate large withdrawals in the weeks leading up to when Christine departed the residence. He laid the documents before the judge and showed copies on a screen to the jury. The figures were distinct. Tens of thousands of dollars lost in rapid succession. The jury shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kody's attorney, Mr. Harris, rose hastily. His tone was suave, but on the defensive. Your Honor, these transactions are not evidence of wrongdoing. They were common family expenses, incurred by all. This is a family of numerous children, numerous needs. My client should not be demonized for meeting those obligations. Christine's attorney raised an eyebrow, nearly smiling. Family expenses. He faced Christine. Tell me, Mrs. Brown, did you have knowledge of these expenses? Christine shook her head decisively. No, I wasn't. I only found them after everything was gone. And those family expenses weren't for the family. They were for one person, Robin. The audience gasped even harder. This time, the judge pounded her gavel, calling for order. But suspense was only just starting. Mr. Daniels returned to the evidence table and reached for yet another folder. Your Honor, Exhibit B, Property deeds. Those are the documents which reveal that the funds withdrawn were being used to make a down payment on a new home. That home is not in Christine Brown's name. It is in Robin Brown's. The room erupted in whispers, waves of disbelief spreading like flames. Kody scowled, his face a deep red. His words burst out before his lawyer could silence him. That's not true. I didn't leave anyone behind. Christine had just as many chances as everyone else. She chose to leave. The judge spun around. Mr. Brown, get hold of yourself. You will speak only when it is your time. Kody sagged back into his chair. His jaw clamped, his fists balled. His attorney whispered frantically in his ear, attempting to reassure him. But the damage was done. The jury had witnessed his outburst, seen the panic in his eyes. Christine's attorney went on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about Christine wanting to leave. This is about Kody Brown wanting to take away her stability, wanting to move resources away from her, wanting to create a life for Robin, while giving Christine nothing but debt and despair. He spun around, once again pointing at Kody. This is not love. This is betrayal. Christine's eyes welled up, but she didn't blink. For the first time in years, she sensed the weight of the truth at last, bearing down in her direction. The judge inclined forward. We will hear from the defendant now. The whole room turned its attention to Kody. He got up hesitantly, supporting himself against the table with his hands. His voice when he spoke was low but shaking with frustration. I gave Christine everything, he declared, his voice resonating in the silence. I gave her my time, my money, my love. If she feels betrayed, that's her decision. But I never left her. I never left her with nothing. Christine's laughter, bitter and icy, sliced through his statement. You call that love? Taking the roof over my head and giving it to someone else? Scrambling to pay bills while you poured everything into Robin's life? That's not love, Kody. That's betrayal. The courtroom was silent. Kody's face stiffened. His attorney yanked him back into his seat, cursing urgently once more. But it was too late. The jury had witnessed all they had to see. The cracks in his assurance, the terror shining in his eyes, the fury in his tone. The battle had erupted into the daylight, and there was no going back. The public was aware of the facts. This trial was no longer about right and wrong in love. This was about justice. This was about truth. And the anticipation of what would happen next hovered over the courtroom like a storm cloud waiting to unleash. The atmosphere within the courtroom was becoming more dense. Even the fluorescent lights appeared less bright, as if they too sensed the seriousness of what was taking place. The jurors slumped forward, pens scratching furiously onto paper. Each twitch of emotion, each utterance between Christine and Kody, was now indelibly etched into the fabric of this trial. Christine's attorney, Mr. Daniels, stepped forward to the witness stand again. His gaze was intense, his words merciless. Mrs. Brown, you stated you found financial irregularities after leaving the home. Did you dig deeper into where that money ended up going? Christine nodded, her fingers clutching the wooden railing before her. Yes, I believed it was an error initially, but then I discovered records, transfers, withdrawals, and then I discovered the deeds to the properties. That's when I realized the money was being channeled into Robin's house. The words hit like thunder. Robin did not appear in the courtroom, but her not being there nearly shouted louder than had she been there. Whispers of her name echoed throughout the audience. Robin Brown, the favored wife. Kody's attorney, Mr. Harris, stood up hastily, putting on his glasses. Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay speculation. The judge leaned in, speaking firmly. Overruled. The evidence speaks for itself. Proceed, Mr. Daniels. Christine's attorney smiled weakly and glanced over at the screen in front of the courtroom. Figures blinked there. Withdrawals within days of Christine's disappearance. Tens of thousands of dollars, sucked out nearly overnight. Mr. Brown, said Mr. Daniels, snapping his head toward Kody, would you like to tell this court why you drew down close to $200,000 from your joint accounts with your family before Christine disappeared? Everyone looked to Kody. His shoulders moved restively. His jaw clenched. He leaned forward, his words measured. That money was for family costs. For all of us. Food, utilities, upkeep. This is not uncommon. Christine's attorney arched his eyebrows. Family expenses. Do family expenses typically entail a $50,000 payment to an upscale property company in Robin Brown's name? The courtroom gasped. Even the judge's eyebrows twitched. Kody's face went red. His attorney intervened, attempting to stem the tempest. Your Honor, that is immaterial. Mr. Brown has the right to dispense money as required within his family. That is a domestic issue, not a criminal one. The judge shook her head. Mr. Harris, this is an economic case. Relevance has been determined. Permit your client to respond. Kody's throat constricted as he swallowed hard. He looked away from Christine. I wanted to make sure Robin and her kids were stable. The rest of you guys already had places. It wasn't favoritism. It was duty. Christine's laughter, bitter and cold, cut the silence. Duty? When I had bills mounting. When I was left scrambling to get a roof over me and my children. That's not duty, Kody. That's cruelty. The jurors wrote notes more rapidly. The crowd hummed, whispers popping like flames. Mr. Daniels moved closer, pushing harder. Now Mr. Brown. As Christine was left with nothing, you took the family money and established Robin's future. Would that be equality? Kody's hands curled over the edge of the table. His knuckles paled. His voice emerged low, on the verge of growling. I provided Christine with everything she required. If she couldn't handle it, then that's not my responsibility. Christine's attorney's voice grew loud, cutting like a knife. You provided her with nothing but promises. And an empty residence. The words repeated, the same words that Christine had said at the start. The audience gasped again, ice running down the room. The judge brought up her gavel for order, but the mood would not subside. The tension had come to a crescendo, encircling the courtroom like chains. Christine's attorney was not finished. He addressed the jury, his tone slow and leaden. This isn't one wife against another. This is one man who finagled money, who took away a woman's security, who picked one household over the other. This is betrayal in its most basic form. And now the law gets to rule whether betrayal has repercussions. Kody's attorney, frantic, requested a recess. But it was not granted. No recess. We go forward. The truth needs to be heard. The tension clung to the room like mist. The jury hesitated, torn between sympathy for Christine and suspicion raised by Kody's outraged belligerence. The audience sat motionless, not knowing what would come next. And then the bombshell hit. Christine's attorney produced a fat envelope, sealed in red tape. He held it up for the court to behold. Your Honor, we've received additional documentation by subpoena. In this envelope are letters between Mr. Brown and a financial planner, establishing intent to move assets away from Christine before she'd even left the home. The judge's brows furrowed. Go on. Mr. Daniels opened the envelope gingerly, spilling out a set of printed emails. His voice was clear as he read aloud. See that Christine's name is taken off the property. Transfer money quietly. This is all for Robin and the children only. The courtroom broke out. Gasps, shouts, incredulity filled the air. The judge pounded her gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Christine's hand shot to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face as the truth, raw and irrevocable, filled the air. She'd suspected that she'd been betrayed, but reading it on paper broke her all over again. Kody's face went white. His attorney attempted to object, but the proof was too great. The jury had witnessed it. The crowd had witnessed it. Christine's attorney allowed the silence to become oppressive. Then she spoke softly. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not a case of mismanagement. This is not family spending. This is one of betrayal. This is one of a man who conspired to take his wife's home, her security, her dignity, and succeeded. The room was frozen, the air so tense it seemed the very air itself might break. The judge settled back in her seat, her expression inscrutable. Her gavel lay in the palm of her hand, but she didn't ring it. Not yet. The tension was at its snapping point. Every person in the courtroom, from the jury, to the onlookers, to Christine and even Kody himself, knew one thing beyond any doubt. This trial was no longer about money. It was about truth. It was about justice. And it was on the brink of turning everything around. The courtroom had never been quieter. Even the air was stilled, as though the world outside was holding its breath to listen to the ultimate arguments of this sensational case. Christine sat taut in her chair, her fingers tightly clasped in her lap. Kody was forward at the defense table, his jaw clamped so hard it appeared to ache. The case was stacked against him. Bank statements, deeds to property, emails of intent, and still the verdict had not been handed down. For all the onlookers were aware, the judge might yet be influenced. The judge put her reading glasses back on and scanned her notes. Her voice was steady, but authoritative. We will now hear closing arguments before I deliberate. Mr. Daniels, you may begin. Christine's attorney rose, fastening his coat as he approached the jury. His gaze swept each face deliberately. His voice weighed and measured. Ladies and gentlemen, he started, you have heard the testimony. You have listened to the records. You have read the emails. The truth is self-evident. Kody Brown deliberately set about taking away Christine's home, her money and her security. He did it while investing in another household, favoring one wife while leaving the other behind. He paused, allowing the words to sink in. This case is not about jealousy. It is not about polygamy. It is not about reality television. This case is about betrayal. Cold, calculated betrayal. Christine Brown gave this man decades of her life, raised his children, ran his household, put her own dreams on hold. And when she finally made the courageous decision to leave, she was punished, left with nothing, made to watch as the man she trusted bought luxury for someone else. He held the incriminating email aloft again. The eyes of the jury tracked every letter. This is no accident. This is no misapprehension. This is intent. This is deliberate. This is betrayal. In black and white, Christine's attorney spun around, his fingers shaking at Kody. And betrayal, members of the jury, must have repercussions. The crowd hummed with speculations, the air so thick with tension that it seemed the walls themselves were imploding. The judge nodded decidedly. Mr. Harris, your last word. Kody's attorney rose, fiddling with his glasses nervously. His tone was silky, but it trembled under duress. Members of the jury, I ask you to rise above the passions in this trial. Rise above the hurt, above the tabloids, above the gasps in this courtroom. What we have is a family squabble, not a criminal defection. My client, Mr. Brown, has supported his wives and children for decades. He worked hard to provide for them all. Homes, food, stability. To depict him as the villain is to overlook the years of devotion he devoted. Did he make decisions that not everybody liked? Yes, money was transferred. Does that establish betrayal? Or does it establish a man trying to juggle the impossible burden of many homes? Christine hurt, but pain does not equate to crime. Disappointment does not equate to fraud. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to recall that. He sat down hastily, his face sickly white. Even he was not certain of his own words. The judge looked to Kody. Mr. Brown, is there anything you'd like to say before I deliberate? The room shifted forward as Kody stood slowly. His voice, when he had it, was lower than before, on the verge of shaking. I did my best, he started. I gave Christine everything I had. Maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe she didn't feel loved. But I never wanted to hurt her. I only wanted to keep my family united. Christine stood up hastily, voice crisp and biting. You didn't keep your family together, Kody. You broke it apart. You didn't just hurt me. You left me with nothing while you built a kingdom for Robin. You chose who mattered. And I wasn't one of them. Gasps swept through the courtroom again. The judge banged her gavel, demanding order. The tension was excruciating. Writers wrote furiously, already envisioning the headlines. The jury looked at each other, the weight of the case bearing down on them like an overweighted mountain. The judge brought her gavel up again, her gaze sweeping the courtroom. I will now deliberate, she declared sternly. This court will recess for 1 hour. When we reconvene, I will read my verdict. The room was in an uproar. Fans murmured angrily. Reporters made a frantic rush to the doors to rewrite their accounts, and Christine sat back in her chair, her fingers shaking. Kody, on the other hand, was immobile, his face ashen, his eyes unfocused. For the first time he was no longer a man in command, but a man cornered and awaiting the inevitable. As the bailiff rang out for order, tension in the courtroom was impossible to bear. Every heart in the room pounded with the same question. Would the judge decide in Christine's favor, or would Kody manage to wriggle free of the accountability for his treachery? The verdict was coming, and when it finally came, it would either shatter Kody Brown's empire, or save it. The courtroom resumed after the longest hour of Christine's life. For 60 minutes she had sat silently, twisting her fingers nervously, running every sacrifice, every shattered promise, every second she had stood by Kody's side and been discarded when she no longer suited his scheme. Now as the bailiff summoned the court to reconvene, Christine's chest ached. Behind her, Kody was gaunt, his shoulders falling forward, eyes glued to the wooden table in front of him. For once the self-assured patriarch, who once ruled over several households, was at a loss for words. The judge stepped in, and the room became absolutely still. Even the newsmen, normally filled with murmurs, and the click of pens, sat stock still, their attention focused on the woman now holding the Brown legacy's future in her hands. Judge Matthews replaced her glasses, her voice firm but burdened with what she was about to announce. This court has considered the evidence which has been introduced. We have seen checkbooks, property deeds, and letters. The issue before us today is whether Mr. Brown did have the intent to deprive Christine Brown of her rightful property and security. The crowd leaned forward. Several people folded their hands in a silent prayer. The judge's eyes narrowed as she focused on Kody. Mr. Brown. The records indicate overt transfers of money to accounts not connected with Christine. The deed to the property was transferred to Robin Brown's name without Christine's consent. And the emails, they demonstrate purposeful intent. Christine's breath caught in her throat. Tears burned behind her eyes that she was determined not to let fall. Not yet, not until it was finished. The judge spoke again, now with a pointed tone. Not a misunderstanding. Not a case of poor communication. This is fraud. This is abandonment. And this is betrayal. The room burst into gasps. Kody's head snapped up, his mouth opening to protest, but nothing emerged. His lawyer clamped a hand on his arm, whispering desperately, but it was too late. The verdict was evident. Judge Matthews brought up her gavel. This court holds Kody Brown liable for financial abandonment and fraudulent transfer. Christine Brown is entitled to full restitution, including damages, attorney's fees, and her equity in the family assets. In addition, the court directs the reversal of the property deed executed into Robin Brown's name. Christine's hand rose to her mouth as the tears streamed down her face. Relief was like a dam bursting after all those years of suffering in silence. Her lawyer put a firm hand on her shoulder, saying softly, "You did it." The audience erupted into talk, some gasping, others shaking their heads, others applauding before the bailiff commanded quiet. The journalists wrote frantically, aware the headlines would burst all over the nation in minutes. But the drama was far from over. "Order in the court," the judge ordered. She wheeled about to face Kody. "Mr. Brown, not only have you hurt Christine, but you have undermined the very foundations of the promises you said you held dear. You professed yourself a man of justice, but the proof reveals trickery and partiality. This court will not abide this sort of behavior." Her gavel came down again, the bang resounding like a last nail in the coffin. Christine shut her eyes, allowing the moment to envelop her. For the first time in years, she felt something that she had believed she had lost forever: freedom. But before the courtroom could settle, Christine's attorney broke in again. "Your Honor, before we adjourn, there is one last piece of evidence we have to add into record." Gasps rippled through the room. Even Christine spun about in shock, her eyes wide. "What?" she breathed. Her attorney reached into his pocket and produced a smaller envelope, this one addressed with gold tape. He presented it to the judge in his hand. She slit the envelope open, furrowing her brow as she read. As she looked up, her expression was somber. "Mr. Brown," she spoke slowly, "this is your financial advisor's letter. It outlines a plan to transfer not just Christine's holdings but also assets associated with Janelle Brown. The plan was to lock both homes into Robin's name, in essence eliminating two wives from security." The courtroom erupted. The crowd yelled in shock, the reporters near falling over one another as they scribbled down each phrase. Christine's eyes grew wide with disbelief. This treachery went deeper than she herself had realized. The judge slammed her gavel repeatedly. "Order, order in this court." The room fell silent, but the tension was too great. Christine's voice cut through, shaking but firm. "You weren't only trying to delete me, were you, Kody? You were going to delete all of us. To give it all to Robin." Kody's face contorted in rage. He snapped for the first time. "I did what I did. None of you liked me, none of you respected me.
Robin was the only one who stood up for me. She got it all. The rest of you walked away. His words boomed, rough and unapologetic, ringing out across the courtroom. The jury gazed in shocked silence. The judge's face hardened. Thank you for acknowledging your intention, Mr. Brown. Your statement will be placed in the record. Kody's attorney hid his face in his hands. It was finished. Christine stood, her body shaking but her heart unbroken. She confronted Kody straight on, her voice ringing out in the courtroom with quiet finality. You might have attempted to wipe me out, Kody, but today showed you can't shut up the truth. You betrayed all of us, and now the world's aware of it. The judge brought her gavel down one last time. This case is closed. Court adjourned.
The bailiff stepped forward, laying a stern hand on Kody's shoulder as the courtroom exploded once again. Journalists scrambled for the doors, eager to report the scoop that would top the news for weeks. Kody Brown exposed in court, betrayal, fraud, and the fall of a family empire. Christine emerged from the courtroom slowly, tears running freely now. But they were not tears of defeat, tears of release. For the first time in decades, she was leaving not as the dumped wife, not as the overlooked one, but as the woman who fought back and won. Kody, on the other hand, was left behind, his kingdom destroyed, his image shattered, his secrets exposed. And as Christine emerged into the sunlight, mobbed by a sea of supporters and popping cameras, one chilling question hung in the air. If Kody could betray Christine so profoundly, and even plot against Janelle, what other secrets were still hidden, waiting to be exposed? The suspense would never really be over. The Brown family legacy had disintegrated, and the world was watching each piece fall.